Hey there YouTube, this is the Phantom Outlaw coming at you with another review. And no, this is not a comparison today. We're not going to compare one firearm versus another firearm. This is kind of a twofer in regards we got two of basically the exact same firearm. What we're here to talk about today is, and this is a mouthful, I do apologize, the Taurus PT111 Millennium G2. Okay, what does all that mean? Well, a couple different things. This is a newer, updated version of what used to be called the PT111 Millennium Pro. The Pro's been out for 10 or 12 years now. The G2 has been out for about 2 years. And it really started gaining popularity earlier this year based on some reviews that I think took a while to come out. And I'll get to that more in a moment. But a lot of people get turned off when they see the name Taurus associated with the firearm. I get that, I understand it, and I'm certainly one of those people for the most part. But I wanted to go over why this is one of those exceptions, why this particular firearm does not have to be something that you turn your nose to or are unimpressed with, whatever the case may be. So let's talk about a few different things. As usual, I'm going to go over the specs first, and then we'll discuss some of the pros and the cons. So let's talk about what we've got here is the 9mm version. This is the PT111. There is also a version called the PT140 Millennium G2, which is the 40 caliber version. Very much the same pistol, just a different caliber. So if you're looking for a 40 caliber version, for the most part, this review would also be applicable in that sense. It's just that these two here happen to be 9mm versions. So this is a striker fire action, although on Taurus's website, they call it a single action, double action. I'm not quite sure exactly how that comes into play here, but it is truly a striker fire, and it does have the second strike capability. More on that in a moment. We've already talked about it being a 9mm. The overall height is 5.1 inches. The length is 6.24 inches. The width, and this is a little confusing, so I do apologize, 1.21 inches. However, that's at its widest point, which will be right here where you see the safeties extend. The slide and the grip are right about 1 inch. So there's a slight difference there for the better. So obviously that's a plus. Again, more on that a little bit later on. The weight empty is 22 ounces. Magazine capacity for the 9mm is 12. For the 40 caliber is 10. The sight radius is 5.1 inches. The barrel length 3.2 inches. The sight system is a 3-dot sight. Now the front sight is fixed. The rear sight is adjustable for windage and elevation. It does have a manual thumb safety, and it does have a 1-slot accessory rail. Alright, so those are the basic specs. Before we get too much further in this, I do want to go over a couple things about this firearm that kind of got a little bit confusing, and I apologize for that. I'm going to try to clear up a lot of that right here. So what we're going to talk about with the firearm is that when we talk about the size of this, the width of this, we're going to find out that as far as what category it falls into is what I refer to as a tweener. It kind of falls in between the subcompact and the compact. What I'm getting at with that, if those of you that are familiar with the Glock lineup, say a Glock 19, which is a similar size to this, a little bit longer, a little bit wider, a little bit heavier, but it also has a higher magazine capacity, 15 versus 12. Here with the PT111, one of the appealing parts of it is because of just how thin this grip is. It's easier to conceal. It's similar to some of the single stack 9mm that are out there. Again, a little bit wider, and again, in between in terms of sizes. I've had this next to the Shield, I've had this next to the Glock 19, and it's a little bit closer, what's right in the middle between technically, I guess, numbers-wise, but it's very similar to the single stack in terms of how you're going to carry it. So that's one of the appealing parts of the 111, is that it is kind of a unique size. Not unique that it's the only one out there, but it doesn't have its own designated size characteristic. Alright, so that's one part of it I wanted to talk about as far as uniqueness to it. Let's start talking about some of the pros. Alright, first of all, value. So the price on this is a very favorable part of this firearm. Taurus is known as a value type company. One of the reasons people like to kind of roll their eyes when you talk about a Taurus handgun is because in a lot of cases Taurus gets bashed for its reputation in terms of reliability, quality, how jamming issues, things along those lines. That's no secret. Everybody knows that. Taurus knows that. They're working to resolve that, and this is one of their first efforts. Again, this gun's been out for about 2 years, but it was very slow to get off the ground, if you will. And I think, this is not a fact, this is my opinion, I think a large reason for that, one, the original price of this when it first came out was around $400, which was not a bad price. But I don't think anybody was giving a Taurus handgun at $400 a lot of consideration because, well, it was a Taurus. I think it took some time before people started really noticing it. I know that earlier this year, in the spring, February, March, into April, you started seeing more and more of the more popular reviews show up with very favorable comments and opinions on this firearm. About that same time, I think Taurus started realizing that they had their hands on something pretty good here, so they started knocking the prices down on these things, which meant the retailers were going to knock their prices down. So this $399 became $349, became $299, became $249, became $199 in some cases, depending on where you shopped and when you shopped. So more and more of these started getting out there. More and more of these positive reviews started showing up. Next thing you know, everybody's excited about this new Taurus gun that's, you know, getting all kinds of good attention, and for the right reasons. So the value of this gun was not bad at the beginning, but it's even better now. Now here, as we're closing out 2015, the rebate that's in existence for it is winding down here next week. So unfortunately, if you haven't already taken advantage of this, you're just about out of time. But nonetheless, even without that rebate, it's still a very good value. So the value and the price is definitely got to be considered among the pros. Alright, it does have a manual external thumb safety. The safety is not a flush mount safety. It does stick out, not quite 0.2 inches, but it is a manual external thumb safety. When you swipe it with your thumb, it's very easy to actuate. It's not a problem. Up, safe is on, like most people are familiar with. Down, or red, the safety is off. So if you're familiar with a lot of the other manufacturers' safety configurations, that doesn't really differ. I know there are some that are opposites, but for most people, when they consider the manual external thumb safety, this one kind of falls right in line. So the fact that it does have that is definitely got to be considered a pro as well. The ergonomics of this gun is kind of unique. I've already mentioned its size kind of falls under the tweener category. What's nice about it is with these various, and it's tough, I'll get as best a picture as I can with this, these little grip textures here, which you'll see on the back and the sides as well as the front strap here, they are aggressive, there's no doubt. They're rough, like sandpaper sort of rough. And again, for me, being a guy, I definitely consider that a plus. I'm going to sound a little bit sexist, and I apologize for that. Females out there may be a little bit turned off by that, but I promise you, put it in your hand, hold it, feel it, work it around a little bit, and you're going to realize that it's really not so bad. But it is a definite plus for many shooters. When you have it in your hand, it really feels good. The grip is a very comfortable size grip. The ergonomics are a definite plus for it. The size. We've already talked a bit about the tweener size. I think that definitely falls into the plus category. This can be an inside the waistband concealed carry gun. It can be an outside the waistband. It can be a glove box gun. It can be a purse gun. It can be a nightstand gun. It can be a desk drawer gun. The size allows itself to fit several different roles. So the size of it can definitely be considered a plus. Reliable. If you do a Google search and look at a bunch of the reviews that are out there, or if you look at a lot of the YouTube videos, or if you read a lot of the magazines that have reviews on this firearm, the overwhelming majority will be very positive. Yes, there are some negatives, but the overwhelming majority are very positive. In my experiences between these two, I've got over 400 rounds through them, primarily through the black one here, but about 400 rounds. I have not had a single issue. Now, that's a small sample size, I understand that. But the information available to me from many, many other people has been very similar, that there really just aren't a lot of issues out there. So right now, and I realize it kind of sounds funny to hear it, but a Taurus handgun that's reliable should be considered a plus. That's not a real common combination of words, but it definitely fits this case. If you should have any troubles with this gun, and certainly it's possible, another plus is the lifetime warranty that Taurus offers on their firearms. Again, mixed reviews on that. Some people comment about how hassle-free and smooth the process is. Other people talk about what a pain in the ass the process is. I guess it just depends on each unique experience, but they do have a lifetime warranty. All right. One more thing we want to talk about with this, and you may have already noticed this when I've turned around. Right here, we've got a loaded chamber indicator. So when there's a round loaded in this, that little chamber indicator is going to be raised ever so slowly. I'm exaggerating, but I'm showing you the motion. When it's raised, you can certainly see that. But how about if you're in a low light situation? It's dark out or there's very low light. Well, you can run your finger across the top of it and you'll be able to feel if the loaded chamber indicator is loaded. Definitely a plus with that. Alright, it does come with what's referred to as the TSS, the Taurus Security System. What that is, if you look on the side right here, you're going to see right above my finger there's two small screws, and I apologize if the lighting's not real good with that, two small screws. That's to adjust the windage and the elevation on the sight. Right behind where my finger was, or right above where it is now, you'll see another small hole. That's for the Taurus Security System. The gun does come with this wonderful little tool, as you'll see me dangling there in front of it. And on that tool, you're going to have two different heads. One of them is a flathead screwdriver. The other one is a little hollow Torx tool. That tool, you'll put in the gun, in this little slot here, spin it forward. Nothing happens. Well, didn't spin it forward quite enough here. Spin it forward. There we go. You cannot pull the trigger. You can't pull the slide back. So if you're not going to be actively using the gun and you're concerned with someone getting their hands on it, you can lock it like that and it's inoperable. You take that same tool, put it in, spin it back, and now the gun is operable again. Now again, we already safety checked that. So the fact that it does come with a Taurus safety system and that tool is included definitely is a nice little plus as far as safety goes. Alright, well, a couple other quick things. We briefly mentioned before the second strike capability, or the double strike, and you just saw me do it there. So what happens, you're firing a gun, and you pull the trigger, and you have maybe a hard primer, and it doesn't discharge. You don't have to rack the slide, just pull the trigger again. This is a striker fire gun, but it does have the second strike characteristic, which is not unique, but it's not real common, so it definitely has to get a nod for that. It does have a trigger safety or drop safety very similar to Glock and Smith & Wesson and a lot of the other folks. You're going to see right here, there is a small, you can see it here, a trigger within the trigger. Again, very much like a Glock. So if the gun is dropped while it's loaded, that trigger safety, without being pulled, will not enable or not allow the striker to advance. So a small safety there. It does have a pretty smooth trigger reset. So as you can see, it's tough to really recognize this on the camera. Right there, you heard it and felt it. There it is again. Right there, there it is again. So you've got, it's a pretty short trigger reset. Again, nobody's going to claim that this has a top of the line, first rate trigger system in it. It's not a bad trigger, but it certainly is not top of the line. But the trigger reset does help quite a bit. When you consider the rebates on these things, and you can get these guns for around $200 or $250 or so, the trigger that you get for that price is a very worthwhile trigger. All right, the last of I guess the pros I want to mention on this, and while I have not personally verified this, I have read it a number of places, I have seen videos of it, but apparently the 6R P226 magazines will work with this gun. I saw somebody had a 18 or was it a 20 round SIG P226 magazine that they were able to use in this. Again, I have not verified that, and that certainly wouldn't work for concealed carry. You don't want to have a big old stick hanging out the bottom of that. But if you can get an 18 or 20 round magazine in there for range use or for some shits and giggles kind of shooting, I guess that's a plus. Again, not verified. Alright, so how about cons? There definitely are a few things to be aware of or concerned about with this. Not a whole lot really. And we've already talked at length about one of them, and that is the Taurus name. Taurus's reputation is not the best. Again, no secret, they're aware of that. Everybody else seems to be aware of that. But this particular model, you're getting quite a bang for your buck. They seem to have worked out a lot of the issues that the predecessor had. Their attention to detail, their quality control in the manufacturing seems to be a little bit better. Maybe that's a sign of things to come for Taurus. Who knows? But in this case, you know, you have to kind of look past that. Some people can't, and that could be considered a con. Some people just turn their nose up at anything named Taurus and move on. That could be your mistake in that case if that's you, or it's your opinion. We're all welcome to have our own thoughts on that, but just be aware that some people may not be real happy about that. Another concern is there's really a lack of aftermarket options and items for this firearm. It's been around for about 2 years now, so although the popularity has really snowballed and steamrolled here the last 6 or 8 months, so maybe we're going to start seeing more and more options. But holsters are creeping into the market, but they're not, you know, everywhere just yet. Sights are really difficult to find options for, so there are options, but they're very, very limited. We mentioned this also before, the grip texture. I listed it as a pro. I don't mind it at all. I think it's quite comfortable. Some people might find it as a con. It is rough. There's a little bit of grit to it, no doubt about that. As you hold this firearm in your hand, you are going to feel this rougher texture. Most people would consider that a plus. Some people may not. So again, mentioning everything as best I can, this is one of those cases where you have a pro and a con with the same feature. Another thing, and this is being kind of nitpicky, I wouldn't necessarily call it a con, but it's something that I wish were a little bit different. As we look at this, right here is the magazine release. It's not very large. It runs this way instead of this way. Like say the Gen 3 Glocks are smaller this way as opposed to the Gen 4s go bigger this way. This one runs like this. It's about the same size as the Gen 3 Glocks, it just runs in a different direction. So it's really not a negative, it's just for me, I wish it was a little bit bigger. Now, this is not a large gun. It's easy for your thumb to get, well, again, I'm showing you the wrong side, but when you're holding it, it's easy for your thumb to reach and to manipulate the magazine release. So it's not a horrible thing, it's just one of those wishes. I wish it was a little bit bigger. So a small con in that regard. So that's really about it. I'm sure there are other concerns out there, and certainly the internet is a great source to look for some of those. There are some reports of some issues, like any other firearm. That's not to say that this gun has never had any issues. I'm sure there's a number of them out there. But typically when people talk about Taurus, the first thing they think of is, well, I've had this gun for 2 years and I've had to send it back for warranty work 4 times, or whatever the case may be. And so far that does not seem to be the case with this particular model. They've done a good job with that. So for at the price that you can find it, the features you get, the reliability that it offers, and what it is, it really does seem to be a pretty positive consideration at any rate. Would this be the one and only gun that I would stake my life to? No, probably not. Certainly when I have other better options. But does it work for the role of the truck gun or the extra gun for, you know, in the backpack when you're out? Who knows what different kind of reasons like that. As a backup, as a secondary gun, I'm comfortable with it. If it's what you can afford. You know, let's face it, not everybody can afford to spend $400, $500, $600, $700 on a handgun. If $250 or $300 is really stretching your budget, then this is not a bad buy. There's cheap guns out there that are cheap. There's also inexpensive guns that are well made. I think this is one of those inexpensive firearms that happens to be a well-made firearm as well. So there you have it. That's my 2 cents. If you have any questions, please drop me a line below, and I will get back to you as quickly as possible. Hope you're having a great day. Happy holidays, and Happy New Year. Take care.